In a quiet village, surrounded by green hills and dusty roads, there lived a girl named Amina. She was kind, intelligent, and hardworking, but there was one thing that made her different from the other students in the school: her accent. Amina's family had moved from a small rural village to the town only a few years earlier. She spoke differently from her classmates. Some words sounded strange to them, and whenever she read aloud in class, a few students would giggle or whisper behind her back. At first, Amina tried to ignore it, but slowly the laughter began to hurt her deeply. Whenever the teacher asked a question, Amina often knew the answer, yet she kept her hand down. She feared that the moment she spoke, the class would laugh again. Even during group discussions, she stayed silent. Her teachers noticed that she had become unusually quiet. One afternoon, during English class, the teacher announced a storytelling competition that would be held the following week. Anyone interested can write their names on the board. The teacher said cheerfully. The classroom buzzed with excitement. Several students immediately volunteered. They talked confidently about the stories they would tell. Amina lowered her head and focused on her notebook. She loved stories more than anything. Every night she read old books borrowed from the school library. Sometimes she even created her own stories in street. But speaking on stage, that felt impossible. After class, as the students rushed outside, Amina remained seated quietly. Her teacher, Mrs. Grace, walked toward her. Amina, she said softly, why didn't you sign up? Amina hesitated. I can't speak like the others, she whispered. People laugh when I talk. Mrs. Grace sat beside her and smiled kindly. Do you know something important? She asked. Amina shook her head. The strongest voices are not always the loudest ones, the teacher said. Sometimes the voice that trembles carries the greatest courage. Amina remained silent. Then Mrs. Grace handed her a small notebook. I have read some of your writing before, she continued. You have a gift. Don't hide it from the world. That evening, Amina could not stop thinking about her teacher's words. For the first time in many months, a tiny spark of hope appeared inside her heart. The next morning, before she could change her mind, she quietly wrote her name on the competition list. When some classmates noticed it, they exchanged surprised looks. Her, one boy whispered with a laugh. She can barely speak in class, another mocked. Amina felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. For a moment, she almost erased her name, but then she remembered Mrs. Grace's words. The strongest voices are not always the loudest. So she left her name on the board and walked away. For the next few days, Amina practiced her story every evening under the dim light of a small lantern at home. At first, her voice shook badly. Sometimes she forgot her words halfway through. Sometimes fear made her stop completely. But each time she tried again. Little by little, her confidence began to grow. Finally, the day of the competition arrived. The school hall was crowded with students, teachers, and parents. Bright lights shone on the stage, and loud chatter filled the room. Amina sat backstage with trembling hands. Her heart pounded so loudly that she thought everyone could hear it. One by one, students walked onto the stage and told their stories confidently. The audience clapped and cheered. Then the announcer called her name, Amina Hassan. For a second she froze. Fear wrapped around her like chains. She wanted to run away, but then she saw Mrs. Grace standing near the curtain, smiling gently at her. You can do this, the teacher whispered. Amina took a deep breath and stepped into the stage. The room suddenly felt enormous. Hundreds of eyes stared at her. Her hands trembled. When she spoke her first sentence, her voice cracked slightly, and a few students quietly laughed. Amina's stomach tightened. She nearly stopped, but then she looked toward the audience again and noticed something unexpected. Many people were listening carefully, not laughing, listening. So she continued. Slowly, her fear began to fade. Her voice became steadier. The story flowed naturally from her heart, full of emotion, warmth, and honesty. The audience grew completely silent. Every person in the hall focused on her words. For the first time in her life, Amina was not hiding, she was being heard. When she finished the final sentence, silence filled the room for one long second. Then suddenly, the audience erupted into applause, loud applause. Some people even stood to their feet. Amina stared in disbelief. The same classmates who once mocked her were now clapping the hardest. Tears filled her eyes, not tears of sadness, but tears of pride. That day, Amina did not just win second place in the competition, she won something far more important. She found her voice, and after that day, she no longer stayed silent in class. She raised her hands. She shared her ideas. She spoke with confidence because she finally understood something powerful. Your voice does not need to sound perfect to matter. It only needs courage to be heard. Never let fear or the opinions of others silence you. Your voice matters even if you are afraid.